Hello, this film's about budgeting for university and making your money last. Welcome to this film about understanding the investment you're making whilst being at university. You have some costs to think about, and the major ones are your tuition fees, of course, and where you're staying, your accommodation. Also, don't forget, you'll probably need some textbooks and some other supplies, depending on what your course is, and the living expenses, things like food, transport, and personal things like healthcare, leisure, sports, hobbies, anything like that. Might even be a bicycle you use for transportation. University in itself is a significant investment, but planning can make it much, much more manageable and easy on your budget. So, talking about budgets, there's an easy way to think about this. Firstly, think about what you need. You absolutely can't do without, else you will suffer. Things like food and drink, and paying your bills like gas and electricity and water, if that's appropriate where you live. Think then about your wants, the things that you want. You can do without them, but these sort of things make your life so much better, make you happier, make you feel good. And then there are things like savings. If you've got money left over after you've paid everything that you absolutely need to and everything that you want, you might have some spare money that you can save up. So, in terms of your needs, these are the essentials that you really must pay for. And in your budget, this should represent ideally about 50%. So, about half your money goes on these sort of things, as I've put in the list there. Some examples. Now, moving to the things you want, ideally in your budget, this would represent about a third of the money you have. So, about 30% of your total money available to you. And these are things that you want but aren't essential for your life, like eating out, hobbies, clothes, travel, subscriptions like Netflix, TV streaming, computer games, those sort of things. And then finally, if you've got money left over, ideally about 20%, think about savings and importantly, any repayment of debts that you have. Now, this is an aspiration, this is an ideal situation to be in. So, your savings you can put towards things like an emergency fund. Perhaps you've got a dream at the end of your course when you graduate of going on holiday. Well, that vacation needs to be paid for. Perhaps you've got some credit card debt, and it's always wise to pay off your debt before splurging out on other things because the debt costs you money. So things like credit card debts, student loans, they will cost you money to have that borrowed money available to you. So calculate your total income after any taxes that you have to pay. If you're at work, you might have to pay, for example, income tax. Then divide that income into those three categories and try and split it 50, 30, and 20%. 50 with those things you need, 30 with those things you want, and 20% for paying off debts and saving up for bigger purchases like vacations. Importantly, track your spending to make sure you're staying within your budget. This could be very difficult to achieve, especially students who don't traditionally have much money available coming in each week or month. But be honest about what's a real need and things that you really just want. Things like food, things like water, like electricity, like gas. Those are things you need for your life. Things like clothing, they could the purchase of those things could be put off a little bit. Those are the things you kind of want, but without which aren't going to cause you a serious problem, at least in the short term. Perhaps you need to adjust the percentages. For example, if you've got high rent, for example, you might need to push up from 50 to 60% for your needs category. You could use a spreadsheet like Excel simply to keep track of your spending, but there are loads of budgeting apps available to help you do this. And there's this idea about zero-based budgeting. Here, the goal is that you've got money. So in the UK, we use the British pound, and every one of those pounds has a purpose. So your total income minus all your expenses in zero-based budgeting should equal to zero. So you calculate your total income after taxes and other stoppages, things like pensions and equipment hire and all that sort of stuff. Then you list all your expenses in terms of your needs and your wants, and you allocate money to each of those expense categories. If you have any money left over, then they go automatically to your savings or debt repayments, or perhaps extra debt payment. If you're over budget, cut back on expenses until you reach zero. So zero-based budgeting starts by covering all your essential needs, and then you allocate money to your wants. And then if you have any left over, pay for any debts, pay off those debts, and put any extra into your savings. So track your spending carefully to make sure you're sticking to your budget, but be flexible and adjust your budget when things come up and as needed. And this method requires far more detailed tracking than the 50-30-20 rule, as I explained earlier. So every dollar or every pound has a job. It's up to you to decide where it goes. So whichever budget technique or method you're using, it does require you to track your expenses, making sure that you know what you're spending your money on, and making sure that you can decide whether what you spend your money on is what you really need, or are they instead what you want. There's also, of course, depending on your situation, financial aid out there, if you look for it, often linked to your school or through your university. There might be things like scholarships. They might be based on merit, so you have to score particularly highly to get such scholarships, or perhaps they're need-based or very specific to your field. There are sometimes grants available. Again, often these are need-based, so if there's a genuine need that you have, then perhaps you can apply for grants. And there might even be either private or government loans, like in the UK we have the student loans system. So wherever you're thinking about applying for potential financial help, then do look carefully into the deadlines and the eligibility requirements and the differences between supposed free money, so things like grants and scholarships, and loans, which will need to be repaid at some point. But also try and make your money last. If you've got limited budget, try and think about where you live, for example. Are there cheaper options available, for example, in a shared house, or perhaps living a little further away from a popular campus? In terms of food, you could save money by perhaps cooking at home more. Learning a few key recipes could be helpful in saving that cash. Plan your meals carefully so you don't waste food and you don't overcook and end up throwing food that's gone off in the bin. And always, always, always try and find, when you're buying things, shops and stores that give student discounts. When you're buying your books, your textbooks, and any other supplies that you need, well, use your university or school library. That's free for you. It's there. It doesn't cost anything. But perhaps you could rent books or buy used books from secondhand bookstores or online, like the World of Books, for example. There's also entertainment that is free or low cost activities, for example, often organized by students' unions at school or at university. And again, entry to those sort of venues and events might offer student discounts, so make sure you use them. And of course, thinking about traveling around, could you get a bike? Could you walk? If not, if it's too far, or you're in more of a hurry, public transport or perhaps carpooling systems might help you save a few pounds as well. The other side of the coin is that if your income isn't that high, then you need to go out and perhaps earn some money. So, boosting your income, there are earning opportunities perhaps on or off campus in terms of part time jobs. Quite often, university or school libraries want people to tidy up the bookshelves and deal with new students when they need to be shown around and how to use the library, for example. Perhaps there's internships for nearby companies or companies that are relevant to the course you're on. Perhaps you could become a freelancer. Perhaps you have a particular skill or knowledge that is valuable to other people. But do be careful on balancing your work with your studies because you don't want your studies to suffer. But I appreciate for some, it's a balance between that and having enough money to buy enough food and to meet all those needs that you have in your life. But do try and prioritize your academic success because this will be greater benefit in the future for you. Also, avoid debt. So there's borrowing money, but do it in a responsible way. So always understand the interest rates that the people or person that's lending you that money is going to charge you and how you're going to repay that money. What's the plan for doing that? And always avoid any unnecessary debt. Think about things like credit cards. Try to avoid credit cards with high interest. So if you're thinking about taking out a credit card, look at the interests rates that they charge and choose the lowest one with the best repayment plans in them. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been valuable to you. If you've liked it, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, or leave a comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks very much. Bye now.